This episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, me and my guy Richard Stayman are going to discuss Richard's biggest risers for the 2024 NBA draft. We are just days away from the top of the year, so we've had enough time to evaluate guys over, I guess, almost 2 months now. So we're going to find out who Richard has rising up his draft board, and then in the next episode, we're going to have the guys who are falling. So stay tuned to find out who is rising up Richard's draft board. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlow, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board. And my co-host for the day, like I mentioned in the open, is Richard Stayman. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment. That is the best way to help us grow this channel. And before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It is the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code, but it has to be in all lowercase, LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, let's get started. Happy holidays. Happy early New Year to you. It's been a little while since we've been on together. And I lost my voice again. I'm trying to get it back right. How's everything going your way?
It's been good. It's been busy. Went out to do some high school scouting last week in Florida at the City of Palms. Definitely seeing how different every other draft class in the coming years is compared to this one.
So which draft class are you really high on?
I love the 2025 class. I mean, it was my first time seeing Ace Bailey in a full game. And I got to see him versus Dylan Harper. Got to see him in a couple other matchups too that were just outstanding in every single court he's been on. He's got at minimum the highest upside of any player in the country right now. I think if you're just talking about 6'9", off ball, on ball, two-way wing, like he's got the superstar mold. I was really excited to see him, and obviously Cooper Flagg's incredible. There's just so much top end talent, I think, in that draft class.
So you would take him over Cooper Flagg, right? Like right
no,
now?
I'm not there yet. I had some people trying to talk to me about that, and I see the argument because if you're going off just absolute ceiling, I think his ceiling is higher, but more likely to be a great player. I think there's the realistic outcome is Cooper Flagg still.
Have you seen the kid from the NBA Academy?
I have not yet. I have not. He's one of my next watch guys.
Yeah, I think he has a chance to be really special also. But let's get into this draft. So we've had a little bit of time to evaluate guys, and this draft is all over the place. And we'll just start with number one. Who's like the biggest riser for you so far for the 2024 draft class?
Yeah, so I'm going based on – I tried doing a couple different criteria, really just from the start of the year where I expected this class to be, like going off my original board – and also to where it is now. And then also like even from 3 weeks ago, right over December, who's really just made that jump from their presence is noted to going and taking that other step. And most of them are going to be the first one, but there are a couple guys really who fit the other one as well. But the first one for me is I had no idea about Reed Sheppard being this good. Like I know he's got some shortcomings, but
what do you think his shortcomings are?
He's short, and he's not short, but like his size, he's not a point guard, and he could probably get beat up on defense. But the thing is, he makes so much happen on the defensive end that I think I'm okay with it. Like, he just knows how to get turnovers. And it's such a weird thing, but it just works. Like, he always finds a way to disrupt the play.
I'm not saying he's Tyrese Maxey, but people said Tyrese Maxey was short. They said he's not a 1 or not a 2. And Tyrese wasn't definitely not as efficient or productive as Reed was as a freshman. But I think it could be one of those things where you just look at what he's doing. I mean, last I looked, I don't have the numbers in front of me. He was shooting like 58% from three, like 58% from the floor. And so, I mean, I think he's definitely caught a lot of people by surprise. Unfortunately, I just think some NBA teams are going to overthink it. And he could be that guy. And in 2 years, we're like, how did he fall outside of the lottery? because he doesn't pass like this. Teams are looking for these guys that are raw, that are long, and like super explosive. I mean, I don't really know exactly what his shortcomings are that are major. I mean, he's a good athlete. You can't say he's a poor athlete. He can shoot. I mean, I just think people are going to overthink it.
Yeah, he's one of those guys for me where it's like, even if you say, okay, physically he shouldn't be able to be a good defender, or physically he shouldn't be able to get to his spots as easily as he does, like he does. Like sometimes the aesthetic doesn't match the actual like processes. And Reed Sheppard's a great example of that. Like the shooting is very real. Obviously, is he 58% or whatever he is from three real? Probably not. But I mean, he's almost a 90% free throw shooter on small volume. So like it's not like, and obviously you just watch the shot, like it's beautiful. Like there's no flaws on it. Why would that not go in? And again, just I buy this stuff where it's like, okay, you are averaging 2.8 steals a game. You're telling me you can't find a way to impact the defensive end. Like even if teams go, hey, this guy's small and may not have the best physical profile for guarding ones and twos, is it that big of a deal? And also, just one last thing, we talk about over the years we've done this. We talked about several 6'4" guards that are off ball guards first that have been drafted, and like the high second round. Why can Reed Sheppard not thrive as that guy too?
I mean, I think he can, and I think he will. I just think that he may not have had he wasn't on anybody's one and done list coming into the season. And I think some people are slow to put him in that range because they're sticking to their guys that they really liked. I mean, there's quite a few guys that I was high on coming into the season. I thought we're going to be, one and dones, and more than likely they're going to have to come back to school. And Reed Sheppard is a guy that I don't think he has to come back to school. I think he's solidified himself as a first round pick.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just think he has all the makings. Then you look at Kentucky guards, like it just adds up for me at least. I think he's a guy that's going to thrive in the NBA right away.
Do you have a range for him? Because I think he's someone that if he falls outside of the lottery and he goes to a playoff team, I think with his ability to complement anybody, he can play off anybody and knock down shots. I think he should be someone that could have an impact as a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, put him in Orlando. I mean,
where are there minutes at in Orlando though?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna have some changes, but even then, though, like he has the role nobody else has, right? Like Cole Anthony's the closest thing right now as the off-ball shooting guard. Reed Sheppard can step in and do that as well. So that, like, they need shooting, and he fits that very well.
Do you think he can play point?
As needed, but he's not going to be running the sophisticated sets. He's out there keeping you afloat as a point guard, not necessarily taking you to the next level, if that makes sense.
Here's my thing though. Is he going to have the opportunity to show that at Kentucky?
No. Which is why the Kentucky guard syndrome.
But he with Dillingham and DJ Wagner, I don't think he's going to really get that opportunity to show that he can do that. I think that he could be someone that in summer league you're like, oh wow, he's playing the point. He's initiating the offense.
And who's sorry, and Reeves is in front of him. Like, yeah, he's the fourth guard.
Yeah. Who's the next player that has really caught your attention and climbed up your draft board or is a big riser for you?
Yeah, so this is somebody who, for me, I knew of him last year is when he emerged on my radar when I went down to Miami to see Isaiah Wong. And this guy just blew me away. I thought all the processes were there. You could kind of tell a breakout was coming, but what he's done has been absolutely phenomenal. And that's Wooga Poplar. I've just been a big fan of everything he's done in Miami. He's turned himself into an absolute star on the wings, one of the best athletes, I think, in the draft. Two-way guy. Yeah, he has some turnover issues, but and I've seen a lot of people say that means he has bad feel for the game, which is just not the case. Like if you watch somebody who knows exactly what they're doing every second, he is one of those guys, and that's feel for the game, not turnover to assist. Like to me, I'm all in on the guy, and I know he's a hard worker too. So I buy all of what he does.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really good athlete. He's a shot maker. One of the things that I wanted to see out of him this year was becoming a 3-level scorer in a sense, because it's like he has the tools and athleticism to be able to like be really good at finishing around the rim. We know he can like create his own shot and get to like his pull up, and then he's a pretty good 3-point shooter. I mean, he's shooting like what 50% from three this year. It's like 50, 50, 87. Like, I mean, the numbers are really impressive. I've seen some people still have him as a second round pick. I don't know what more he needs to do. I mean, I guess conference play, and I think this class is going to be trending more towards older guys in the first round. I mean, you're still going to have your young group, but I mean, I definitely think he could be in the lottery range.
Yeah, I mean, and also just a little foreshadowing, almost every single player in this list is an upperclassman. So, like, that says a lot. Yeah, for me, look, he doesn't have a great handle. The turnovers are kind of an issue. I don't think the turnovers are going to be an issue in the NBA because of what he's actually going to be doing. Like, I don't see him as a primary creator like he is in Miami right now. He's probably their best shot creator at the moment. And
Yeah.
that's just not going to be him in the NBA. He's going to be playing way more to his strengths.
Yeah, I think he's one of the better shot creators in this draft. I mean, definitely in the top 5, in my opinion, of shot creators. If there's a guy that I said, hey, I need a bucket, go out and create one, I think he's one of the best. But I tend to lean towards shot makers and guys with offensive creativity. I think the handle is okay. I think the handle is good enough to get to his spots. It's just the turnovers and sometimes like the decision making. All right, when we return, we're going to talk about a few more guys that are on Richard's list of draft risers for 2024. But let's talk about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. It is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It is just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of players, including pros and sharks, all you have to do is pick more or even less. You just pick 2 to 6 players and their stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. And since basketball season is in full swing, you can now pick combo projections across football, basketball from the Specials League. It is a league that is created specifically for combo projections, which includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So, for example, you can do LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. And also, if you want to play against, some famous people like Meek Mill or Andrew Schultz, you can do that in the community plays. And it's under the promo tab of the app. So you can view some of the entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community. So go to PrizePicks.com. They have fast withdrawals, easy gameplay, and they have an enormous selection of players and stat types to choose from. So go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA, must be lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that are covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, we left off with, and I've heard people correct me, say it's Wooga. They say it's a Philly accent. Wooga. Is it Poplar or Poplar?
I remember telling myself it's popular without the U, and I just cannot get up and end up saying it right. Like, I botch names all the time, so I'm the worst person to ask for this, but I think it's Poplar.
Yeah. All right. Who is the third player on your list of big risers for 2024?
Yeah, so this next one is a guy who I knew of him at his last school in Northern Colorado. Didn't expect him to be this good right away, and I think he's solidified himself into getting drafted already, especially if he does well in conference play, and that's Dalton Knecht. I really like his game, 16 points a game. He's been able to play some good defense. I just think on the wings, he's that guy at 6'6", right? Like, he just finds a way to impact the game. I really like what he's done so far. He's cooled off a little bit, but for the most part, I think he's still really impressed. Like, that game against Illinois he played was really impressive. I like what he's done.
Yeah, he hasn't been the same since the North Carolina game where he had 37 points and twisted his ankle. Since then, he's only had 2 out of 5 games in double figures, but that North Carolina game was impressive. He was like 13 of 17 from the floor.
Yeah.
And it sucks because he sprained his ankle at the very end of the game. And he just hasn't really looked the same since then. But I buy everything that he brings to the table, the athleticism. There was a play, it was in the preseason where he had this crazy dunk coming down the lane. I think it was like in a scrimmage against Michigan State.
Yep.
He can shoot the ball. I mean, he was a really good shooter at Northern Colorado. At one point this year, he was scoring big numbers, but the 3-point shooting wasn't efficient. But now he's back to about 37% from three. I like him a lot. I think it's going to I should say that I think that he has a really good opportunity to be a first round pick. If I'm a team like Milwaukee or
Yep.
just a team that is looking to compete for championships, and I want somebody that can come in and play right away and complement my star. I'm looking for a guy like him because he can shoot and he can attack a closeout and he's ready as far as like mature wise. So I don't think some of the teams that are contenders are going to be looking for a project that they're going to have in the G League for the next few years. So I could see him as a late first round pick.
Yeah, and also just a little bit of that UNC game you brought up. So, like I think it was 6 of the first 7 games. These are who we played: Wisconsin, Wofford, Syracuse, Purdue, Kansas, UNC, all in a row. And in that span, he averaged 21 points a game, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block, almost 1 steal on 50% shooting, 42% from 3, 80% from the line. And like against that real of competition and that early, like there's real flashes there, and he's going to do well in the SEC. I agree. I think if you put him on a team that, I mean, even Minnesota right now, like you add him on the wings, like that's a huge bump for a team like that trying to get over that hump and make themselves a second round team to a Western Conference Finals team, or any et cetera, Western Conference Finals to finals. Like he's a guy that really helps you get there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Boston could use some depth. Philly could always use a floor spacer. So I think there's some teams that would be really interested in him. All right, who's the next player on your list? So we
Yeah,
talked about 3. Who's number 4 for you?
yeah. So again, another guy who I knew who he was, didn't really think he was actually that much of a threat to do what he's done. And honestly, it's been nothing short of fantastic. That's Anton Watson at Gonzaga. He has had some insane games. I think he went, I got to remember what he was, but he had one also similar to 13 of 17. He had 14 of 15 against UCLA for 32 points. And I don't care what you do, how that all comes. If they're all offensive rebound putbacks, I don't even care, which they weren't. Like doing something like that is incredible. I've been so blown away with him finally putting it all together. The feel for the game has always been very strong. That was one of his big selling points at 6'8". His shots developed well. He can play defense. I really like his game as just one of those connectors in the front court. Figure out the position and roll exactly whatever comes next later. It's all going to be just about the fit with the team, but he fits with so many teams that you can make him versatile, which however you want to use him.
You think he's what position or what team do you think would be a good fit for him?
Yeah, so I think if you put him in next to a rim protector, I mean, God, put him in Dallas. Honestly, that's kind of one of those spots where you can be an off-ball guy, very low usage, thrives next to a guy like Lively who has the paint locked up, where you can step in as needed when Lively switched out, or he can really complement and be that just strong layer right before Lively. And then on offense, just he does whatever you need. He can pass, he can shoot, he can keep the ball moving. He's very intelligent, and I think you have to have that to play in the system Dallas has and the heliocentric offense with Luka.
Would you say he's a draft, it's like a second round pick, or do you think he's a undrafted 2-way guy?
I'd take him high second, like top 10 pick in the second round. I
Okay.
really don't. I think you're looking at even lottery tickets almost at that point too. But it's lottery tickets and high ceiling guys, or excuse me, high floor guys. At a minimum, he falls into that high floor. I just feel like he's somebody that can be an end of rotation guy right away.
All right, when we return, we're going to see if how many more guys that Richard has that has climbed up his draft board. Before we get into the next segment, I want to talk to you about FanDuel, because as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is not a better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There is a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, overs, unders, and more. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL and Locked On. All right, last segment. We've covered 4 guys. Who is next on your list as far as biggest draft risers or maybe even surprises for you?
Yeah, so this next one is a guy who I didn't know really much about. This guy, he had been at Texas A&M to start his career, transferred within the SEC to Arkansas and then BYU. But recently, he's just finally taken that next step, and that's Jaxson Robinson on the wings at BYU. He is a sharpshooter. I love his game as an off-ball threat. I think he's a pretty simple evaluation, just being killer off the ball. And I like him. He's 6'7", probably translates pretty smoothly.
What's your draft range for him?
You know, it's funny. I was actually looking at Tankathon the other day, just trying to find like where that exact question. He's not on there. That really surprised me. I think right now he's looking at high second, but historically we've seen shooters 6'7" plus, they rise. So I think he's looking at 20s something pick. And if a team, honestly, depends who's there, right? Like a team that needs shooting desperately probably wouldn't mind taking him in the teens.
I think he could end up being a lottery pick, mid lottery. All right, here's why I say that. All right, on one hand, you look and say, all right, he's been to multiple schools, yada yada yada, and I've talked to a couple agents about it, and one agent told me that the coaches at A&M and Arkansas were like, the kid can't play, and so he's like, well, how come 2 schools say he can't play, but then he's finding this incredible role on BYU? One of the things that I've learned in my research was he classified up, so he started college really young. If I'm not mistaken, he's only 21 years old. So he's 21 years old, and he's what this is like his 4th year or something like that. So he's young. So he may be a year older than Justin Edwards. So he may be a year older than, let's even say, Brandon Miller. He's a year older than Brandon Miller. So he's one of the guys that I feel like we always talk about guys that reclass and they're older for their class and how to knock against them. I think he was penalized in a sense because he started college so early. And so he kind of wasted time. He wasn't ready. But now he's, like I said, he's 21. If I'm not mistaken, I have to double check, but I think he's 21 years old, which is the same age as Brandon Miller. And so if you look at him and say, all right, if last year he was a 20-year-old freshman or 19-year-old instead of like a 17-year-old freshman, then to me, it just makes me look at it totally different because I see the size, I see the shooting. Obviously, he can put the ball on the floor. He can pull up. I actually had one agent. He was so high on him. He was like, he can be a scaled down version of Paul George, just as long as he keeps working. I mean, he said like if you just sit there and look, he scores in the mid post. He's a good 2-level scorer. He can score off movement, and he was like, he can finish. He can attack closeout. He was just like, if you look at that and you get, and of course this is like an agent speaking, and agents usually feel like they have the best trainer that can develop guys, but he's like, if you can get a mini Paul George, if he's 50% of Paul George, you have a really, really good NBA player.
Yeah, for me, my one concern with him putting the ball on the floor is just like I watched the Denver game which I know it's a low end game, whatever, but in that he was getting very sped up with the ball in his hands at times, making himself prone to decisions that just weren't right. And that kind of scares me because if he's doing that against Denver, how common is it? That's something I still need to answer, but I think he's got to be able to be sped up and not make the wrong moves. I think that's going to go a long way. And again, though, he's young for his class. Like maybe that's something you can work on. But I think right now, off ball is the best way for him in the next couple of years outlook.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's going to be his role in the beginning of his career because he has the size and he can shoot. But there are some flashes of him being able to put the ball on the floor. I would just like to see him rebound a little bit more. I mean, for his size and his athleticism, he's, in my opinion, a pretty poor rebounder. He's averaging less than 3 rebounds per game.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Like he just doesn't have any stat that pops away from him shooting.
Yep. Which, in today's NBA, that's what they want is a guy that can shoot. If you can space the floor, I mean, you're like a superstar's dream sidekick. All right. Next player.
Yeah, this is the last one. So I want to give a honorary mention. I'll be just completely honest. The reason I omitted this person is the very next player I'm watching a full game of that I just haven't seen yet. That's in this range, and that's Bub Carrington at Pittsburgh. I haven't seen him yet. I know he's somebody who I had no idea of what to expect from him. I had seen his name on the recruiting rankings and stuff, but he's absolutely risen into probably being a first round guy, but want to, withhold any statements like making the wrong, lines or anything about him just until I see a full game. So I'm omitting him for now. Instead, I'm going to go with a guy in New Mexico who I had seen last year at SMU when he came with Jalen House, who was my top New Mexico prospect, but this guy's just blown up, and that's Donovan Dent.
The best playmaker in college basketball.
Yes. And on top of that, though, see, this is just the general what happened over the year. I've written some notes in that game. I was like, this guy's a guy to monitor. He made a couple nice passes. His shot's not bad. Granted, his free throw percentage is a little bit worrisome, but he is a killer defender. I mean, he played big. He was guarding threes out there in that game. Like, I was blown away, and I was like, cool. So like 2-3 years, I'll remember this name. And then this year he comes on the scene, like you said, arguably the best college basketball playmaker. He's shooting. He's also just scoring at will, and he's still playing the same defense. Granted, he's 6'2", it's kind of an awkward size, but we just saw Craig Porter is going to get his two-way converted any second now. Like,
yeah, I just talked to him a couple of days ago.
They're
waiting on Rubio. They're waiting on the Rubio for.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah,
and the thing is, like, those guys work, especially if they find the right fit, which clearly Craig Porter did. I just feel like, look, you got a rotation guard right there. He may not ever start a game unless it's out of injury, but he's somebody who's going to be an impactful backup at the least.
I love his game. He is, to me, the best playmaker. Definitely, and this is just my opinion, the best live dribble passer in college basketball. I mean, like the angles that he finds guys, and I think he's going to be better in the NBA with floor spacing, vertical lob threat. I was just talking to, like I have agents call me from time to time, ask me who I like, and I was just telling somebody that I really like him. And I'm like, at the very minimum, he could be Ramon Sessions. And if he's Ramon Sessions, that is a long career as, maybe a starter from here and there, but a guy that's in your rotation, that's going to run your offense with the second team, that changes the pace with the second unit. And, in today's NBA and going in the future, if you're a rotation guy, you're going to be making $20 million a year just as a rotation guy, because you figure right now, I mean, the max guys towards the end of their contract are getting like $65 million. So you figure if a guy is half a max guy, that's $30 million. If you're just a little bit less than that, then it's like $20 million a year. So I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. He's still a little bit of a reluctant shooter, even though he is very efficient. When you just look at the accounting stats, he's very efficient. He does pass up some open threes here and there, and like the free throw percentage is a little bit concerning, but I definitely think he could be a guy that is a rotation player for 8-9 years in the NBA.
Yeah, completely agree.
So the thing about Carrington is he got off to a hot start and he has definitely cooled off, significantly. I mean, he's at like 42% from the floor, 30% from three. The free throw percentage is pretty good, but what he does do is he rebounds and he passes. He's averaging like 5 rebounds, 5 assists. My knock on him is that he just doesn't turn the corner and get to the rim. And I know for me, like that's what I personally like out of point guards, or guards that put pressure on the defense, get to the rim. That's not like his greatest strength. And then, I mean, he is young. If I'm not mistaken, he is the youngest player. He might be like one of the youngest guys in Power Five playing right now. He's very young. And so you figure they're guys his age that are still in high school. So the shooting percentages can't, I mean, you can take that with a grain of salt. But I mean, I like what he does. If he ends up playing well in conference play, then I think he could end up being a lottery pick. I had a comparison for him, a little bit of D'Angelo Russell. That's what I saw as, like a bigger point guard that doesn't really turn the corner or get to the rim, but can shoot it, and he can really, really pass the ball. He's a very gifted passer. But when you get a chance to watch him, man, you'll like it. I mean, like I said, he's kind of cooled off as of late, got off to like a really, really good start. But the last few games, I mean, obviously the defenses are now geared towards stopping him, but he's someone that I'm definitely interested in hearing your opinion on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Honestly, in the next week, I'll have more answers on that.
All right. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. But be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. Again, the first 24/7 streaming channel, and is covering the top sports stories from your local experts and the national show. So check it out, Locked On Sports Today. Once again, it's Rafael Barlow with Richard Stayman. And stay tuned for the next episode where we are going to discuss the guys whose draft stock has slipped a little bit in Richard's mind. So stay tuned for that episode. Once again, it's Rafael, Richard, and we are out.